criminal lawyer, Dr. Joe Giglio. He has a special interest in corporate law and has been practicing for the last 27 years. Dr. Giglio also lectures in criminal law at the University of Malta. And today we're going to address the redundancies that are being faced both by employers and employees. Something that I know the two sides don't look forward to, obviously, and find it very difficult to tackle, because most times we're speaking about employers who have been good employers and employees who have done fantastic jobs. Thank you very much, Dr. Giglio, for your time once again today.
Thank you for the invite.
There are quite a number of corporates, businesses, small businesses, even small retailers that have had to make redundant a number of employees. I've come across also some questions sent in by viewers whereby some employers are feeling very uncomfortable to do the necessity and have to lay off people that they don't need right now. Could you shed some light onto how an employer can go through this process in a very sympathetic way, perhaps?
Yes,
and a legal way, obviously.
as you have explained, this is a reality that we are facing. On account of the circumstances that we are living, we are in a situation where employment is being affected. Now, in actual fact, an employer has various ways as to how he could go about this situation. First and foremost, the employer has to determine whether any of the schemes which have been implemented by the government apply for him. In other words, although the problem that we are facing is that the schemes that have been announced are schemes that in their actual implementation, there's quite a lot of bureaucracy to them. But strictly speaking, the first step that the employer could do is that if he is one of the persons who is, so to say, in Annex A, it is called, that annex of those companies which have to close down completely, and he could be entitled to some assistance from the government. The assistance at the moment is that the government will reimburse him the sum of €800 a month for those employees which he has and which he does not wish to dismiss. The employer then, if he is going to benefit from the scheme, can also reduce the wage of the employee in the sense that he has to top him up to a maximum of another €400. So basically, the measure is to the effect that rather than terminating employment, and provided that employer is entitled to this assistance because this isn't open to everyone, he could continue paying a wage of €1,200, of which he will eventually, once he goes through the whole process of the application, be reimbursed €800 monthly. That is one way of how you could deal with a situation where you do not wish to lay off your employees. A second way whereby you could wish to try to not lay off employees is that in actual fact, you could propose to them that instead of working 5 days a week, they go down to a 4-day week employment module. In other words, this would bring with it obviously a corresponding reduction in the outlay which the employee must give insofar as the payment of wages are concerned. Therefore, instead of having a full-time employee who is working 5 days a week, you could offer to the employee as a solution, rather than rendering him redundant, the possibility to work on a 4-day week. Another solution,
May I ask you, before we carry on, does the government subsidy apply to a reduction of the days?
Oh no, in that case, in that case, from the information that we have at hand, this would not be applicable. One has to check the relevant legal notices and verify with the Department of Industrial and Employment Relations, and even discuss it with the lawyer. But the first indications seem to be that there could be a difficulty. Don't forget, Leah, that those people, those entities that are entitled to being reimbursed up to €800 are those which basically have been ordered to close down completely. And a third possibility which you could have, which an employer could implement in order to try to alleviate the problems that he has as a result of the lack of liquidity, is that could also ask his employees, for example, to perhaps use as much leave as possible, use their leave now. He still would have to pay the full wage, but basically he's trying to prepare himself for when this is all over, and when they are going to be starting once again, we won't have a situation of a lot of accumulated leave to which employees are entitled. This is not going to help the employer from a liquidity, from a cash flow point of view, but it could be helping the employer in the long run, because he would be asking his employees to take as much leave as they can at this point in time, so that if we start or reopen, I don't know, in July, you don't have a situation when an employee has still pending a big amount of leave to which he is entitled. And this would therefore bring around with it a situation where the employer would be trying to increase the productivity in order to make up for the time that he has been closed off, in order to make up for the period when his sales were not the same like before, and end up with his employees asking for leave for the remaining part of their leave throughout the year. That is also another measure which an employer could implement in order to try to soften the impact of COVID-19, and in order to try to keep his employees as much as possible with him, and to suffer, so to say, less in the circumstances. The worst thing obviously that could happen to an employee is that he's being made redundant. If he's being made redundant, in the sense that the employer has absolutely no other alternative, but he cannot sustain his wages anymore, redundancy means that the last in, first out principle would apply, and basically the employee would then have to go onto social benefits.
Thank you very much, Dr. Giglio. A very vast topic, and we've only scratched the surface, but we'll carry on next week. He'll be with us next week, and I thank you very much once again. Thank you. That was Dr. Joe Giglio, a criminal lawyer who next week will carry on speaking about the redundancies. A few questions that have popped in my mind, which we can carry on next week, and we'll also talk from an employer's point of view. Thank you once again for watching today. I'll be with you at the same time tomorrow. I wish you a very good evening. Good night. I'm Leah Hogg.